Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Graves of Brook's Designs and Apparel, and welcome to the pleated mask tutorial. Today, I'm going to walk you guys through how to make your own face mask. As we've all talked about and heard on the news, and also seen through Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum, the CDC for the last couple of months has recommended that we wear a cloth mask covering in public when we can't keep social distancing measures. I know a lot of our area designers have also been making and selling them through AAFF, which is really awesome. But if you're at home and you want to be able to make your own, this tutorial is for you. But before we get started, the things you're going to need a tightly woven cotton or similar type fabric to where it's going to be, if you were hold it up to the light, you couldn't see a light through it, so that way it's nice and tight. You're going to need a ruler. You're going to need scissors. You're obviously going to need your sewing machine with matching thread. I would also recommend having an iron and an ironing board, so that way we can really make sure it's good and ironed when we complete our mask as well, okay? So I'm going to get my camera over here positioned and we will get started and we will make our own mask today. So let me get you guys over here. Alrighty. Okay, so as you guys can see here, I have my cutting board set out here. If you don't have a cutting board, no worries. You can totally use other things as well for this project. You can use a table or whatever. If you are using anything that's not a cutting board and you don't have a ruler, obviously you'll want a ruler and some pen and paper to be able to mark out your overall dimensions. So we're going to be making a mask. Most of you should have the supplies needed and the instructions. If you don't have the instructions, they are available on Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum's website. I will be making this mask. It's a pleated 4-layer mask, and it is listed on there. So first we're going to need, so the total supplies needed, we need 2 pieces of tightly woven cotton fabric measuring 8 by 14, 2 strips of cotton fabric measuring 2 inches by 6 inches, 4 strips measuring 2 by 18, pins, scissors, and a threaded sewing machine. So I'm actually going to make one today out of a pillowcase, because I know a lot of us we've been sheltering in place and staying where we're at, which is really what we should be doing right now. But I wanted to give you guys an option. If you can't go out anywhere and you can't buy cutesy fabric, you have something at home that you can already use. So we're going to walk through this using my pillowcase to make these. So the first thing we're going to do, we need 2 pieces of tightly woven cotton fabric with an 8 by 14 measurement. So obviously, as my pillowcase, it already has 2 layers because there's a front and a back to every pillowcase, right? So I'm going to cut an 8 by 14 on this. So for the ease of this, I'm actually going to use my rotary cutter, which I absolutely love. If you're somebody who regularly sews, this is definitely, I personally think, is a good investment. However, again, you don't have to have one. As long as you have a ruler and you can mark your fabric, you can do so. So I'll show you how to do that first, and then I'll use my rotary cutter. So if you do not have any other sewing supplies other than a ruler and scissors and marking, what you would literally do is come out here with your ruler and mark out. I would typically start from a corner because it's a lot easier. Mark from your corner. You want to come 8 down. So we'd say right here. I'll put pins to mark it so that we're not actually physically marking our fabric. I'm going to go 8 inches down here. And then we're going to go 14 across. So I'll leave 14 here. And mark that. And then you would literally cut out your rectangular piece of fabric here, okay? So I'm actually going to use mine on the rotary cutter just because it uses a lot nicer. So I'll show you how to do that on there as well. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this seam over here just because we're not going to be using this seam. But I'm going to keep my fold because we're going to need our fabric folded anyhow. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop that off. I'm just going to use my guide. making sure this is absolutely straight as possible because that's going to be our guide for our next cut, okay? So now we've got this fold here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do our 2 pieces of 8 by 14. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and chop this fold as well because we need 2 completely separate pieces. Okay. So now we're going to measure this. We're going to do 8 by 14 for our cut pieces. So I'm going to put this up in the corner of my rotary just because it's nice and lined. It already measured for us, which makes life so much easier. So I'm literally going to come, we want 8 inches by 14 inches. So I'm going to cut 8 right here. So I'm following where my guide is here. If you were to look on my actual pad here, it says 8. I'm going to cut across this line here and make sure we going completely straight so we don't have funky looking fabric. And because my rotary pad is not long enough, I'm just going to take this guy right here and finish cutting the end. All right, so save the rest of this because we're going to use this for our strips. So now I've got a piece that is 8 feet tall, or sorry, 8 inches tall. And we are now going to go across 14. So again, I'm going to use the ruler that's on the top of my rotary. If you don't have that, again, you've already marked it and you can do it the other way too with plain scissors. I'm going to take it over here to the 14, line it up, and cut it on my 0, and then I will have my 2 pieces. Make sure my edges are pretty. Okay, so now, these are scraps from that. So now I've got my 2 pieces of 8 inch by 14 inches here. So that will be our actual, what we're going to use to do the pleat of the mask. So we'll put that aside over here. Then we need 2 strips of fabric measuring 2 inches by 6 inches. So we're going to take the rest of that pillowcase that we just put over here. Again, you can either mark it out with a ruler and with your pens and cut it with actual scissors, or you can use a rotary, whatever you have at home. So we're going to go 2 inches by 6 inches. So I'm going to go up. So I'm going for the 2 and the 6. So first I'll cut my 2 inches over. And then go up 6. So there are my 2 strips of 2 by 6. This is actually going to frame our mask once we get it pleated so that way we don't have loose ends showing. And then we need 4 strips of fabric measuring 2 by 18. These are going to be our fabric ties to tie it onto our actual face. So again, give myself a clean line here. And reset. Okay, so 2 by 18. So 18 this way on my rotary is actually from the 0 to the end of the pad. So I'm going to do 2 inch strips all the way down. And so we need 4 total. My fabric is already layered over, so you're only going to cut twice on this for me. It's always so much easier if you have your fabric layered over itself, so having it laying on top of each other. That way you don't have to cut multiple times. It saves you a lot of time. So 2 inches over, 18 inches down, so do 1, that's 2 layers. And 2, that's 2 layers. So that's our total of 4. So I cut them into 2 inches, and now I'm just going to cut at the top where the 18-inch mark is. And again, these are the fabric ties that we're going to be using to tie onto our actual faces. Okay, so now I have my 1, 2, 3, 4 strips for my actual tying onto my face. So now we have everything cut out and even have remaining pillowcase left over. So this is honestly, if you have this at your house, this is great for that. I think total maybe, like, you really don't need more than like a ½ yard to a yard of fabric for this project. It's really not a whole lot, and it's not expensive, which is great. Again, you can use this in any cotton. There's a lot of really fun cotton springy and summer cottons right now that you can grab at your local store. So I would highly advise you guys do that. So we're gonna go over here back to the sewing machine. Now that we have our pieces all done up, I'm gonna show you guys how to pin this, and we will start sewing. I'm gonna get you as close as possible so you can see it. So here are our 4 pieces for our face strips. We'll do that at the very end. First, we're going to work on the actual construction of the mask itself, so we'll put these to the side. Here are 2 strips of 2 by 6. Again, that's going to go on the edge of our mask once it's completed. So again, I'm going to set this aside for now. And then I have our actual mask fabric. So we have our 2 layers of 8 by 14. So the very first thing we're going to do, because it's going to be a 4-layer mask, so obviously right now we have 2 layers, we need to double this over to make our mask. So we are going to fold it over. So if you had a right and wrong side of fabric, you would actually be putting the wrong side of the fabric, the right side of the fabric, excuse me, together. So if this is the right side of the fabric, we'll be putting these 2 together. And the same for this one. So over here where y'all can see me. Okay, so we have our 2 pieces here. We're actually going to put these on top of each other here. Okay, and then we're going to stitch along here, and we're going to flip them inside out. So you have your 4 layers. You'll want to pin these so they don't shift on you. So you want to pin these 4 total over here. So we're going to pin right along here. We've got our 2 layers together. Actually, I'm incorrect. Okay. If you have 2 pieces of fabric, one actually has the print, one is the inner layers, you're going to put it within itself, because then we're going to turn it right side out. So you want to make sure the right sides are together, making sure I'm reading those right on here because I have a different method that I typically use. No, I was right. I was correct. Okay. Disregard. We're going to go back to this. So you have your printed fabric, right sides together in one layer, and then you have your inner fabric here. Put them on top of each other. Line up this end, because this is the end we're sewing here. Again, you're going to pin this. Make sure everything's really lined up so we don't have any crazy ends. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Okay, so we have our 4 ends lined up here. Again, you're going to go through and pin these. If you have a zigzag stitch function on your machine, you can use that. I have an industrial machine, so I'm just straight stitching. I prefer straight stitch personally. We're not going to be putting any elastic in this area. It's completely up to you. Okay. So now we're going to take this. We're going to, here we go. We're going to put it through the sewing machine. We're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if you look on your sewing machine, as most of you who sewn, you will see your actual measurements over here. We're going to go to the edge where this hits the 1/2 here and stitch along this seam. As always, backstitch when you're doing a stitch so that way it does not come undone. We're going to come all the way down. And again, when you're finishing a seam, make sure you're backstitching. That ensures that it does not come unravel on you when you flip it. Otherwise, you have to flip it back out and redo it again. Okay, so now we have our 2 pieces here. We are going to flip these guys. Your right side of your fabric, right? So I literally just took one in and flipped the whole thing in on itself. So now we have our inner layer, which was our printed fabric if you wanted to do something that was not completely solid. On the exterior, and we have now 2 extra layers of our interior in here. So that way this is more filtration for when you're breathing. So now we have this. I'm going to go over here to my ironing board, and we're going to iron this out so it lays really nice and flat on our mask. So you can see I have my instructions over here, but I set that aside. And for cottons, you're going to want a decent amount of steam on your iron to make sure your settings are to the cotton setting, and that way your steam is on, so that way you get it really nice and flat. And I promise you, working with a flat mask is going to be so much easier than working with a crinkled mask. Been there, done that. Make sure you keep your hand away from the steam. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to stitch down here and here, so that way it's completely closed in here, and that way we don't have any freaky ends on the ends, okay? So we'll go over here. So now that we've ironed it out, we're just going to do a stitch on each side so that way our layers don't come undone. So again, I'm going to use, this time I'm going to use probably 3/8 instead of a 1/2, just because it's coming in onto my mask quite a bit. And once we fold over our pieces to bind the ends in, we want to make sure that it's not too far in. So I'm just going to do 3/8 amount. And this is just, again, to stabilize the ends so that way they don't come undone on you. Do one side. As you can see, we're going to want to bind this because already cotton likes to fray. So we want to make sure that we're closing everything in so that way when you wash it, it does not unravel on you. Again, 3/8 in here on my sewing machine. Just going down the way here to close that in. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just trim my ends so they don't look sketchy. Okay, so now we have the mask with the ends all done. I'm going to even this out a little bit because it's also a little weird. And the beauty of this is it's just a rectangle. If it's not perfect, you can trim the ends. It won't affect it as much with the fit. You want to make sure that you're just keeping the integrity of the shape. So now we have this piece. We're going to go back to our sewing machine now because we're going to iron down our pieces here for our ends and our straps. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that over here. So our pieces, let's go ahead and start with the ends of the actual mask strips here. So I'm going to put our actual tying straps aside. As we know, we made pieces that are 2 inches in width, which means that we are going to be folding it once in on itself to the middle and then folding it over on itself again. But in the process, we want to make sure that we're folding over the tops and bottoms so that way we don't have a cut end here on the end that's going to fray our mask. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to iron the 2 ends in. So you're going to fold it over, I'd say about 1/4 inch here. And we're going to iron it. Be very careful of your fingers. You got 1 end folded here. We'll do the other end as well. So now we have our 2 folded in, so that way it's completely encapsulated, so that way it won't fray on us. So we're going to fold this one side in and the other side in to meet in the middle. If you want to, just want to hit that middle mark here. And just to show you guys the middle, what I'll do is I'll put pins on the end so you can see where the actual middle is. So here's the middle of this end and that end. And so we're basically making what, for lack of a better word, a bias tape for the ends of the mask. Okay, so we're going to take this piece, we're going to fold this half in half to meet where our pins are, which is the center, like so. And we're going to iron it. And then we'll do the other side, same thing. Halfway into the center. Which this part is very, very tedious, so just be patient with yourself. It is very difficult to just sit here and fold fabric and hold it and iron it. So be very patient and be very careful with your fingers. Okay, so as you can see, I now made like our little tape that's gonna go on the end of this. The last thing you're going to do, which this end's a little wonky for me, but I'll fix that when I go to the sewing machine. We're gonna fold it in half to complete our end and iron it. So now we have a fully enveloped end for one end of the mask. And then we'll do the other one. So again, starting with one end, folding it over about 1/4 inch, pressing it down, make sure your seam is on, give it a good press, like so. Flip it over to the other side. Going to iron that bit. Steam that puppy out. And then we're going to go in and do the same folding method we did on this piece over here. So again, just to show you guys where my center is. Here's the center of my bias tape, or what will be considered a bias tape. So we just know where it is. We're going to fold one half over to that center. And iron it down. Be careful of your fingers. Good, and then we will do the other side, which this end for me got a little funky, but that's okay. Again, folding it in half. Now to meet those two raw edges in the middle, like so. Again, be careful with your iron. Then we have our piece. And the last thing I do again is going to fold it in half to create that full binding. There we go. So now we have our two ends to the ends of our mask that are going to encapsulate that whole mask. So I'll go ahead and set these over here on my sewing machine. And then the next thing you're going to iron is your straps. It's going to be the exact same method that we just did on these. So there's 4 of these. So I'm going to go through these really quick, show you how to do them, and that way you can see. And then we will go back over to our sewing machine so that way we can actually finish out our mask. So again, be careful with your fingers. 1/4 inch. Again, you're folding it halfway to the middle of that piece. Like so. And we'll do the other side. I'll tell you guys, I have made about 400 masks at this point, I think, since the start of this pandemic. And so I actually, on my sewing machine, have gotten to where I can fold these and sew them where I don't have to iron them. I would not advise that for your first times making masks. Make sure you are ironing it. It's going to make your life a lot easier when you sit down at your sewing machine. And the thing is, if y'all want to go and buy double fold bias tape, that's literally what we're making here. If you can find some, that is something that you can use as an alternative as well to this. That way you don't have to do this every time. So this part is time consuming when you make these. So now we're going to do the last step, which is folding in half and ironing it down. Now, a lot of people have said, like, and one of the reasons that we're doing the fabric tie version is that elastic has been extremely hard to come by in the last couple of months due to all of this and people making masks. So, and honestly, I've talked to my older sister and her husband, they're both doctors, and they've had both the elastic and the fabric tie masks. They actually prefer the ties because it gets a better fit on their face overall. One of the things that they say to do is that you really want a snug fit on your mask, so that way there's no outside air coming in, right? So, or going out. So the test is that you really want to make sure that whatever you are exhaling in your particles is not escaping your mask as much as possible. So you could be asymptomatic. That's part of the purpose of this. So by having the fabric ties instead of the ear loops, it gives a better fit on your face to be able to control that exhalation. The other thing I've been told too is that although the elastic is a lot easier to take on and off quickly, so if you are in a triage scenario where you're off on with patients, it's kind of different. Or if you're entering a place and exiting a place quickly, you don't have to necessarily have it on all the time. That's fine. But for people who are wearing them with the elastic over the ears, one of the things that healthcare workers have been complaining about is that it actually rubs your ears raw, and that the elastic does not wash as well. So over time, elastic, as you're washing it, warps. And as we all know, when we are wearing our masks, We want to wash them after we've been out in public, so that way they're perfectly clean for the next time we wear them. We're not touching them and risking spreading anything that could have been on our mask. So by using the cotton ties, the actual longevity of your mask, in theory, should be lengthened, so that way the elastic is not warping. So again, I'm just going down here again with this strap. Be careful of your fingers. Obviously, steam is hot. And the last time, we're going to fold this guy over to create our tie. All right, 2 more to go. So as I was saying, so this is the pleated mask. So the difference is between the pleated mask, the other one that we've been using is the contoured mask. So the pleated mask has more fabric overall being used when you're making the mask. It has those pleats in it, which we'll show later, that helps expand over the face. So depending on what face size you are, for a pleated mask, it's a lot more forgiving. The contoured mask, which I don't know if y'all can see, that's what I have back here, pre-cut out. That's the one that comes up over the nose and it has more of a less forgiving fit. So one of the things you want to make sure you're doing when you're making your own, whether it's the pleated or the contoured, is that you're doing it to fit your face shape. Some people have longer faces and larger features. You want to make sure that your mask isn't too small, but you definitely want to make sure it's not too big either. And again, we want to make sure that it's fitted up against our faces nicely when we wear them. I did have some people, you want to make sure, especially on the contoured, which doesn't apply to this tutorial, that it is long enough that it covers your face. Some people are wearing their masks off their nose, which again is not blocking particles. That's the beauty of this pleated one. It'll actually expand a lot better over the face. The thing I love about this too is that, so whatever cotton you're using at home, like again, in my case, I'm using a pillowcase. I'm just using what I had here on hand, just to kind of show you guys that you can use a household item to make these. It's not overly complicated to do, and there's plenty of fabric on that pillowcase. But if you're using like a cutesy cotton or something from your local fabric store, you can buy excess of that cotton and have fun with it. Make yourself other accessories. Later in this series this summer, the next class I'm going to be teaching you guys is how to make a scrunchie. And I'm actually going to make a scrunchie based off of the mask that I had already made for myself. So that way I have a scrunchie and face mask that match. So we will be going over that too. So if today you're using a cute fabric and you have extra left over and it doesn't take a lot to make the scrunchies, do that. I mean, it's really fun. Like, part of this is as we're coming out of being in isolation, as we go to the grocery stores and stuff, you know, I know some people, like, their masks are crazy and whatever. And it's just a fun little accessory to have, right? So even when this is, we're not using our face mask as much, hopefully in the future when this lets up and we have vaccinations and what have you, hopefully we can still be using accessories too that we may be using during this time. And it's just a fun way to add a little pizzazz to your wardrobe. This is my last strap here. Again, 1/4 inch on the ends, so we have no raw ends. Give it a second. There's a lot of things that you can make with cotton. So if you find a fabric that you just absolutely love in a cute cotton print, don't be afraid to make other fun things with it too. It's a lot more fun. All right, last step, we're gonna fold this guy in half. And then we'll be done ironing our last tie. We'll go back over to our mask. The next step we're gonna do before we put on our ties and our ends is we're going to pleat our mask. And we'll finish it out. Alrighty. Okay, so we're back over to the sewing machine now. So the next step is we're going to pleat our mask. As you can see over here, I have our strips for our ties. I have our ends. We have it all nice and ironed now. Now we're gonna go ahead and pleat this guy up. So you're gonna be pleating him an inch at a time. So get your lovely little ruler. So we have a total of about 6 inches here now that we've sewn that. So because we did a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so that took away a full inch on that. You should have about 6 inches. So we're gonna pleat this 3 times, I believe. So if we're looking at our ruler, if you're new to pleating, you can go ahead and do this. Put a pin or a marker of some sort at every inch down your mask. It's gonna make it a lot easier for you. So when you're wearing your mask, you want your pleats to actually go downward. So you're gonna pinch this up and over. So you're gonna match this pin to this pin, so your pleat is going downward. You'll pin that so it stays. So your goal is you want to make it, by the time that you're done, according to the directions. I'll show you guys this on these two. I'll leave my directions out. So you want to make a total of 3 pleats, right? So we're going to be doing 3 pleats. It's going to end up being down on that. And pleats are hard, guys, I'm just saying. So you want to have 3 total pleats. For me, it's easier to pinch at the same time. It makes life a lot easier. So 1. My pens are not very strong today. We'll do another one, so pinch again. 2. And last one, 3. And if you need to go back and redo your pleats and you're not satisfied with them, that's fine. Like this one, I'm not a fan of. On the directions it gives you guidelines as to like how you can do your pleats and such. Typically, you want to do them an inch. Just want to get this down. To me, this is the hardest part of the mask, to be honest with you, because you want to make sure that it's even and that it looks good, but also the functionality of it when we open it back up, it is where it needs to be. Okay, so we have now our 3 pleats here. Do a test with yourself too. So if you want to take a look at once it's pinned, put it up over your face. It should be able to completely cover your nose and your chin, so that way you're completely covered. Okay, so now we're going to stitch down those 2 sides, so that way our pleats stay in place. So where we have pinned, we are going to stitch. So you're going to stitch right along where you had your original seam over here. Remember, you're in 4 different layers of fabric now, twice over, so you're doing 8 layers of once you're actually doing the pleats. So it may take a little bit of gumption to get your sewing machine to do what it needs to do at first. So that side's now sewn and our pleats are done. Now we'll do the other side. Again, going over that same 1/4 inch of where we were before. Make sure you backstitch. You go down the way here. Okay, so now we've got our pleats facing downward, ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and just iron this so that way these pleats stay nice and crisp over here. So we got our pleats. All right, so the next step is we're putting our binding in with the actual strips. Once you've pleated your mask, so our binding should come down to about 3 inches on the side because we've done an inch on our pleats. So on your binding, I ironed it slightly incorrectly earlier. Take what you have, which is fine. We're gonna fold it in half and then encapsulate it. So that way, when we wrap the ends, as you can see, they'll be completely covered. If we did it with the other way, it would come off the edges. So we want to make sure that we're all the way down. So again, this depends on how you pleat your mask. If you're doing it the regular way and it calls to come down to 3 inches, I'll come down to 3 inches total on this piece. So again, check to make sure. I'm going to lengthen this a little bit. This will be on the interior, so it won't really matter. All right, so now we'll go over here. We're going to close up our ends here so they don't look straggly, they don't wash bad. But here's how we're going to do this. So we're actually going to be inserting our straps in at the same time. So we're looking at our mask and our pleats are going downward. So this is our top. We're going to flip to the back side. So now the pleats are going up. You're going to put halfway over your end here because we're going to fully encapsulate this here. So pin your end. Halfway over the edge, like so. The same as the other side. Halfway onto the mask again. I'm going to The beautiful part about this is if you ironed it wrong, you can always go back, iron it back out, and restart it. It is not that complicated. All right, so we have the front side pinned halfway over, doubling this. So flip that guy over. Now that we have that pinned, we're going to insert our ties back here. how this is going to work, so we have our 4 ties. We have the other half of our quote-unquote bias tape over here. We are going to insert, and this is going to look weird, we'll do one side at a time here. Insert our strand going the opposite way of what we want it to go, because eventually what we're going to do, put your folded edge down on your mask, because what we're going to do is flip this over and stitch down this, so that way when we have our mask on, our tie is out like that. So you're putting your strap on the interior to the inside, going the opposite direction of your mask. So we'll do that with the top and the bottom here. I'm going to fold that end over onto that strap. And pin it. Like so. Same thing down here. Put your strap in, fold your end over. You want to put several pins down the way here because this can get really fidgety on you once you're encapsulating all of that material. Okay, and then our end, that guy in there. Make sure your full end here is tucked nice and pretty and neat as much as possible. Again, be patient with yourself. It's a lot of fabric and it likes to shift. Use pins as much as possible to hold it in place because it's going to make your life much easier. So now we have our strips going down. We've encapsulated everything here. We're going to stitch along this, and that's going to be the whole side to one. So again, make sure you're really good and pin before you do this because it will make your life much, 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 much easier. I'm putting extra pins for measure because my tape here wants to make a guest appearance. Okay. All right, so now I'm fully pinned on this again. So your 2 strands are going the opposite way. You're doing this. What we're also going to do in this step, and you can do it at any time before you do this, we're going to actually stitch this closed, right? So we have this completely open here. We want to make sure this gets closed. So I will do that after I do this, and then do it before on the other step. You can do it either step. So I'm going to stitch down this side here. So I'm flipping it back to our front because we want to make sure the front looks really pretty, obviously, because that's where we're going to be seeing the most wearing it. So making sure our front's still fully encapsulated here. And the end. All right, so we're going to stitch down this. Make sure that you're pulling your pin stitch, otherwise you can break a needle very easily. All right, so we're going to stitch right down the edge of this to fully get everything in there so it looks all nice and pretty. All right, so here we go. Again, it's a lot of fabric, so be patient. If your sewing machine is going to be a slug. So I'm pulling the pins on the top and the bottom as I go. Make sure I don't break a needle. But I want to make sure everything is nice and tidy and neat. Make sure you backstitch on the end so it's all fully in there. Alrighty, so now we have this hole in sewn with our ties going out the back of the other side. We're gonna close up these ties really quick before we do anything else. And then we'll finish out this side and go to the other side. So to close up our ties, we've already done all the hard work. So we've already turned our in and ironed it. We've already ironed this close. We're literally going to sew across the edge here and sew all the way down the side of this strap. I kind of did this in reverse order, but it's fine. I'll do it correctly on the other side. So stitch the end, make sure you backstitch. And now we're gonna go down all the way down this side of this strap. I'd say do about 1/8 to 1/4 inch in. We folded it over pretty well, so it's fine. You're gonna go all the way down to where it meets into your mask, and you're going to make sure you backstitch on the end again. So now we've sewn our strap shut all the way, and we'll do the other one. Again, we're going to go around the end here. We're going to stitch the end. And again, you can do this with elastic as well. If you were doing this with elastic as opposed to an actual strap, instead of putting the straps in horizontal to the entire mask, you would insert them in the end here going vertical like so that way you can make an entire loop to this other side. But again, I personally prefer the ties because it gives a better fit to my face, and it does not warp in the wash. So again, we did the end, we back stitched. Now we're going down the strap again. As you can see here, my ironing was not perfect. So if you were in this instance, as you're sewing it, you can pick it up and fudge it over a little bit. That's okay. Like it's the thing that you, as somebody who sews, has to embrace is that perfection is extremely difficult. There's a lot of literally moving parts to this, and you do the best that you can, and you have to redo it if you want to do it, and that's okay. So again, we're going to go all the way to the end here. We're going to backstitch, and we've closed up our other strap on this side. So this whole side now, before we do the very last end tack to put the straps back out, is done. So now we're going to go back to this other side. So first, I'm going to do this in the reverse order that I should have done this. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and tack this so y'all can see this. So once your straps are here, they're facing inward, right? We want to push them back outward. So you're going to flip your straps to go towards the outside like they should be, like so. You're going to pin it. Flip. And pin. So that way when we come back over here, we're going to tack these guys down so they face outward like they're supposed to. So I'm just going to go back over here. And you're going to do that along this edge now. We went already did this edge to actually put them in. We're going to go down the opposite edge now to secure those ties. So again, make sure you're pulling your pins as you go. Make sure you backstitch on your ends. Go all the way down. Backstitch again. And we're done. That whole side is now complete. So make sure you're trimming all your threads because threads are cray. Okay. All right, so now this is the front of our mask, and this side now is completely done, as you can see. So we've taken that, we've tacked it over and gone down the side. So now we're going to do everything to this side. So we'll start with the strap this time. I'm actually going to close it up first because it makes your life so much easier. Again, you folded the end. We're going to stitch down this end and go all the way down. So make sure you go in, backstitch. Turn your strap. And we're going to go all the way down. So there's one strap. And we'll do the same thing to the other. And then we'll insert it into our end and tap, just like we did, excuse me, on the other side of the mask. So stitch the end, back stitch, and we'll go all the way down the strap. Back stitch on the end. And there we go. All right, so now that we've got these closed in, we're going to insert them back into our mask. So back over here again, we're going to insert them into the end. So the end that you did not stitch and back stitch is the end that's going to go in first. Again, you're going to face them towards the inside of the mask. Fold that piece over that we use to encapsulate the end and pin it closed. Work our way all the way down the mask. Then we're going to insert our other tie down here. So again, taking my other tie, the end that we did not sew, we're going to put in with the seam facing down the mask. Insert at the top. Fold that guy over. And pin him in. Make sure everything's tucked in nicely here for when I sew. All right, so we've got our straps going this way. We have it pinned. We're going to flip this puppy over and we're going to stitch that in. Again, I'm going to go from the top side, making sure all my ends are tucked. So we have a clean, crisp front when we're done. And we're going to stitch down the interior of that tape this time. So we're closing it up. Make sure, again, you're pulling your pins as you sew so you don't break a needle. Because I know about y'all, I got a lot of pins going on, which is totally fine. So make sure you back stitch the ends and pluck your pins out as you go. Take your time going down the seam. You don't need to rush. And make sure everything's tucked in nice and neat when you get to the end. And then we will pull all of our pins. We will back stitch that in, make sure it's good. And so there we are. We've got our seam tape encapsulating that whole end now. So now we're going to do the last step, which is to flip these straps back out. And we're going to stitch down the opposite side. So flip your, instead of coming this way, flip it the opposite direction. Pin that guy out. Do the same with the other one. Gonna pin it out so they're both facing outward. We're gonna stitch from the top again. And we're gonna go along the outside here. So we'll go start from the top, going down, right along that outside edge, so that our straps are going outward like they should. Make sure again you backstitch and continue down the strap. And backstitch on your end, keep this good and secure, and clip all your threads. Okay, so once you clipped all your threads and your pleats are facing downward, that is your entire mask. So I'll kind of show you guys how to tie it on your face here really quick before we're done. So now you have your entire mask. Again, pleats are going downward so that they don't catch particles. Spread that puppy out. So they go on your face, over your nose, and under your chin. I like to tie mine pretty high so it stays nice where it should be. Again, making sure it's pulled up over your nose so it's nice and tight through here. Okay. And the other one goes up underneath the nape of your neck here. So it will go under here and tie. And for those of you who have hair, yes, this can be difficult. So now you have your completely pleated 4-layer mask. So again, this is 4 layers. You have 2 full straps that you do, one on top, one on bottom, and that's your mask. So again, make sure that you have all of your stuff sewn into the ends. That's gonna be vital when you go to wash it. Make sure when you're leaving public, when you come home, you wash your masks. I know there's also a tutorial out there for the contoured mask that I did previously with Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum. I don't know if they've posted anywhere, but if you were not able to tune into that live, make sure you try to find that as well. But this is one version. This is a really great version. It has a lot of fabric and it's got 4 layers, so it's really good for making sure that all of your particles are in your actual mask. I'll flip you guys back around this way so you can see me. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer your questions if you have any about this tutorial. Again, make sure that you are washing them. Make sure that if you are going out in public, please use them. There's been a lot of studies done, and I know Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum has been a big advocate for this. Hashtag get your mask on. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I sincerely appreciate it. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you to Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum for having me today to teach you guys. Have a wonderful day and stay safe.